Marshall High School. We had a great group of friends, and we maintained those friendships all our lives. Inside this group, we each had our own special, or as Pat always said, our best friend. That was Pat and me. At the end of her life, when I would visit her each week, she would say, "You are my best friend." And I would answer, "Yes, and you are my best friend." And she would smile her sweet little smile at me. Gail asked me to write something, so I started to write a speech, but it was all wrong. I couldn't get it right, and that's when I realized what was wrong was that Pat wasn't a speech. Pat was a happening. Everything about her was different, and we were so blessed by that difference. Her spirit was in everything she did and said. Her way of looking at the world was so free. There are some events of her life that she told me about that I have tried to recall. Well, this was with you and Bruce. And your dad and mother were up in a camping ground, I think. I'm not sure. Up in a, I think we're up in a forest. Let's see, I have to find my place now. I have to try to recall. The one about the trailer, when they were coming down from the mountains, and all the cupboard doors and the refrigerator had opened. And when they got down at the end of the road, they looked in the trailer and all the food was all over the trailer. The time that Marty came home, Marty was my husband and he was also a very close friend to Patty. And to Dick, of course. The time Marty came home and said, "Pat and Dick are back. We're moving them in tonight." By way of explanation, in those days, we didn't hire moving vans. When someone was moving, everyone who could make it went over and helped. When Mark came home, I said, "How did it go?" He said, "Well, we almost lost the refrigerator down Hidalgo, but we caught it in time." When you came from our part of Los Angeles, you knew that Hidalgo was one of the steepest hills in LA. Then there was the time we went to the street fair in Panorama City. Dick wasn't satisfied until he had won the 5 biggest stuffed animals, one for each kid. And then there was a phone call on a weekday morning saying to me, "I'm coming to get you. I want you to see the house Dick and I are looking at in Woodland Hills." And we piled all the kids in the car and drove out. The house was locked, so we spent our time looking in windows and trying to get one open so we could go inside. Our kids loved Pat, and one day she invited Kathy, that's my oldest daughter. This is Joni, my youngest daughter, and my other one lives in Colorado. Invited Kathy to come and spend a few days with them. Kathy was so happy to be there, and in the morning she wanted to help, so she said, "Pat, can I help you make your bed?" And Pat said, "Kathy, when I get up in the morning, I have no idea if I'm going to make my bed or not." And when she came home, she said to me, "You know, Mama, Pat's my kind of people." Dick spent a lot of time in our house playing snooker. Then he bought his own table, so he and Mark would trade off where they were going to shoot. Joni was a baby and would hang around the table watching the guys play, and she was always partial to Dick. As the years went by, Pat became more and more involved with the kids' sports. Gail started to swim seriously, and she would travel all over taking her to swim meets so that Gail could compete. And then the horse competition began with Kelly and Holly. And when we would talk about once a week, she would talk with me about the expense of going to all the swim meets. And one day she called and said, "Do you think it's expensive to fly a swim meet? Try taking a horse everywhere." I always just laughed, and she never minded any of it. In fact, she loved all of it. Pat spent her life taking care of the people in her life. Kids and friends, she was always there. She encouraged me to date Marty, and she always, from their very first meeting, loved him, and he loved her. Always, without exception, he called her Patty. When we were in middle age, 50s and 60s, we started having our Christmas reunions with all of our high school friends. We had about 15 or so coming every year. Joan Laszlo had the idea for a reunion. So and all of these, there she is in that picture, right? That's Joan. So we had about 15 or so coming every year. We would have our Christmas party at the Tam O'Shanter in Los Feliz, where we came from. We have lost some of our friends along the way, but we still continue to meet each year in December to touch base and say hello and reminisce about our lives together. We can't talk about our friends without talking about Pat's car. Her car was probably one of the greatest happenings. Very few girls had cars, especially bright blue ones with pipes that made a low rumble when you pulled away from the curb. There was Pat with her beautiful blonde hair flying, and all of us in the car, and she would drive us anywhere, home or Donnelly's, which was our drive-in, or the Brown Derby for a malt. She even had her own parking place across from the doorway to the annex, and nobody ever parked in that place. They seemed to know it was hers. We spent a lot of time with Mrs. B too. That's what we call Pat's mother. In later years, she was Claire, but when we were in school and she was hanging out with us, she was either Mrs. B or Brownie. When I contacted our friends, a few of them added stories of their own. Dodie Ballard remembered the time she took her mother's car out and got stuck, flooded the engine. She called Pat to come help her. Pat came right away, got the car running, and followed her home. This was before they were close friends, but she helped her so graciously, Dodie remembers it to this day. And Darling talked about the day that she, Pat, Joan, and Bob Eads, and Pat's dog were at the beach. And Dee and Pat and her dog were out in a sailboat with a boy from Fairfax who had just rented the boat and said he would take them for a sail. They were out a little ways when the boat just rolled over and the sail was in the water. Dee and Pat fell out of the boat. Dee could barely swim. Pat had on a heavy Letterman sweater and began to sink from the weight of the sweater. The dog sat on the capsized boat and barked. And the dog's barking alerted Joan, and she said, "Bob, you have to go rescue them." And he dove in the water and told Dee to roll onto her back, cupped her under the chin, and said, "Kick," while he towed her in. Pat was going down for the third time, and he got the sweater off of her so she could swim, and he helped them both to the beach. And the dog just sat on the boat and kept on barking. Clara wrote, "My long friendship with Patty, I never called her Pat, started in high school. I was elected by her mom to make sure she got to school on time. So every day I walked over to her house and off we went. Of course, you know we didn't always go to school. All the great rides in her car trying to get 6 girls into a coupe. These are just a few of the dozens of funny stories that happened in our years together." We all have a life story, and Pat's story was truly incredible. She was one of a kind and original in every way. She was a huge part of my life. I'm so happy to have had 70 years with her, and so grateful that I have been able to write about our special and enduring friendship. Pat, I will miss you, love you, and miss you forever, and may you rest in peace, my darling friend.
Thank you, Dodie. That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. You're welcome. Well, okay. That was a few years before we knew our mom, and it didn't seem to change. It's been the same our whole lives, and it's been wonderful. The Bass Lake trips, all these memories, all of our friends going with us. It wasn't 6 kids, it was 16 kids. Because we all had our own friends, and they all were welcome all the time. There was constantly people sleeping at our house on the floor. And wake up in the morning and there'd be people there. Thank goodness I had my own bed, nobody bugged me. And people lived with us from South America for a couple of years, these Olympic swimmers. We just had a wonderful, wonderful life because of my mom. And I thank my father for bringing home the money. Because it helped. Todd, I texted you throw those up? Or I emailed it. Could you just throw them up? Life never stops. You can't turn around. You can't slow it down. You can't change it. You do the best you can every day, all the time. And my mom was full of that light. Kindness, courteous, fun, and always happy. And that's a blessing. And as she passed, I kept recalling that story of that lady. And I said, Mom, you've made me who I am. Because I'm always happy too. And I thank her for that. It's been a blessing my entire life. And I love her. And I thank her for that. So, my mom's not doing well. And she passes on. And 30 days later, approximately, I have a grandson. And that will continue forever. Life will not stop. You make it what you make it. You live in it. You either make it great or you make it sad. It's your choice. And I choose to live like my mom. And I learned it from her. Mom, you've been a blessing to all of us, our friends, and I'm glad and very proud of you. And that little guy's name is Ford. And that was my grandfather's first name, and that's my middle name, and my father's middle name. Is it going to work or no? I sent it. Anyway, I was going to have to put up the picture of this new little baby boy. And life goes on. And life will go on for all of us. And each one of these children and grandchildren, when we look at each other, when we share, each and every one of us has a piece of my mom. And people pass on, but their lives live forever. That spirit, that joy that she shared with everyone is in each and every one of these children and their grandchildren. Thank you, Mom, for everything. And thank you all for your love and kindness, and for being here today to share her life and to be a part of ours in this sad time. I'm going to invite anybody up that would like to speak or has a story about my mom. You're all welcome. It's not that hard. And if it comes from your heart, that's all that counts. So anybody that would like to come up and say something, you're welcome to do so. I would love to hear some more of those stories that Dodie just told. This is an old friend of our family's, Gary Stewart. We've spent many summers together with our families at Bass Lake.
As every one of you know, Pat was a special angel that was gifted to all of us. here to thank Pat and Dick and the Redenbaugh family for always taking our children to Bass Lake, to the desert, wherever they went. As Steve has said before, they invited everybody. My kids, 50 years old and down, today still say they probably would have never had a vacation without the Redenbaugh family. We had fabulous trips to Bass Lake, movie times watching, what was that famous one about the Frankenstein? You remember it, right? And at night we're laying there singing after we sit back and forth, oh, whatever it was. And Pat and Dick were giggling and laughing in the room. We were hope they were messing around, but we don't know. Good. The family is so, as you all know, reaches out and kept all of us going and kept everybody going. So, from the bottom of my heart, Dick, one of my closest friends, all the Redenbaugh kids, thank you very, very much. And my children, thank you much.
Youtie, you know, you're always, you know when you do well when your dad has his nice smirk on his smile on his face.
Either that or soup, and then I feel more fit. So there's been a lot of memories about Grandma shared kind of early days. I thought I'd share. My wife and I got to see Grandma kind of right before she died, maybe a week before or so, and we were very lucky. She had one really good day, and she suggested wanting to take Grandpa out to dinner. So we did, which we have an Italian food place we always take him that we love, and we took him to dinner, and next day we were going to see Grandma one more time before we left. And I walked in, she was, I think I called Steve after in a bit of a panic, but she was struggling, and she wasn't feeling really well. And it was tough. We were trying to decide, how long do we say? But in that time we were with her, we shared what we did. We said, well, Grandma, we took Grandpa to dinner last night, and I'll tell you what, she lit right up. And I got married about 2 years ago. It's just a reminder, what true love is and what it looks like, and it's quite an inspiration. So thank you to Grandma for teaching us all about that. And Grandpa, it's great to be here.
That's how they all feel. And it's pretty special to be able to go through life and do that for your children and your grandchildren. Come on, sweetie.
Hi, I'm Tatum. And growing up, I always thought I was Grandma's favorite granddaughter. I was. I was the middle of 4 kids, and Grandma always made me feel so special. She would take me out and pick me up from school and just me, get ice cream. She would go to everything that was important, every skating competition she would meet me, and she met me in Chicago and watched my Junior Olympics competition. She would visit me in Lake Arrowhead. She was always there no matter what. She even visited me when I was in college in St. Louis. Her and Grandpa came, and I had an exam the day they arrived, and somehow she got me out of that exam. I was her favorite. They came to my college graduation in St. Louis, so there was no doubt I was moving to Los Angeles when I graduated because I wanted to be closer to Grandma and Grandpa and all my however many 17, 18 cousins that I had. And it wasn't until I moved to LA that I realized I wasn't as special as I thought. Every one of us, of 17, 18 grandchildren that were in LA, shared the same experience. Grandma went to everything that was important of theirs. It made me realize, wow, we truly have an incredible grandmother that has made each one of us feel so special. And that is truly a unique quality. I mean, I don't know many people that make each person, when they spend that kind of time with them, make them feel so special. And so then I was lucky enough to spend 8 years in LA visiting Grandma and Grandpa all the time, and developing a different relationship than I had when I was growing up. And one thing that comes to mind, actually seeing the photographs, was when a couple years ago I went and spent Halloween with Grandma. And I'd always heard about these infamous stories of her taking pictures of every single child that came to the door in their costume, and then would hand them the photo from the previous